Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday to you. Welcome back. This is the Hot Mic Podcast. The Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nate Ivy, aka Nate the Barbarian, your humble host and moderator. Welcome back. Today, I'm always with Kevin Aldridge, but today we got Phil Heimlich with us. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, what's up? Happy Friday, everybody.
Yep. Same to you, bro. And Phil Heimlich, how you doing, Phil?
Guys, it's your honor. I mean, my honor to be on the show.
Always with the jokes. I like it, man. I like it. Well, today is the day after opening day. Did either one of you get a chance to go down and enjoy the festivities?
I was downtown, but I did not go to the festivities. I had to work, so I did not get an opportunity to celebrate and enjoy the Reds.
Yeah. Are you a big baseball guy, Kevin?
I am not, I enjoy like going to the game just for the experience, but I'm not one of those people that lives and dies with the Reds and watches every game, and that kind of thing. So I was never good at baseball as an athlete, which is probably why it was one of the sports that I absolutely could not do. I think, hitting a baseball is probably one of the hardest things in sports to do, next to hitting a golf ball straight.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Phil? You a big baseball guy? You check out opening day yesterday?
Guys, to me, watching baseball is about equivalent to watching paint dry. They could have given me tickets. They could have let me sit in the dugout and I wouldn't go. Okay. It's just not a game I find interesting. I'm sorry. I know, of course, when I was running for office, I never said that. I'd wear my little Reds cap and go on the Reds parade. But now that I'm free from that, I can really open up to you guys and tell you the truth.
And keep it real. I like it. I didn't.
If Phil ever runs for office again, that will be the first question I ask him is about the Reds. So
hey, if I ever run for office and they get hold of the recordings of this show, I got no shot.
That's pretty much true. Yeah, and I will make it available. I will make it available.
You will.
To any future Phil Heimlich opponents, just let me know. I got all the tapes.
And maybe at my memorial service, when my time comes, as all ours must, you might want to quote from some of these things,
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely will. Well, I asked because, this was brought to my attention by Kevin, and I think that it is a very timely conversation because somebody wrote a letter to the editor saying that they had an unpleasant time when they went to opening day because of the stench of marijuana smoke. And I have heard about this many, many times. I've heard about it last opening day and maybe the opening day before that. People complaining about, people smoking marijuana and it impacting, their time and their experience. And I thought it was interesting. This person made some interesting points. They talked about and asked the question basically like, what have we become with marijuana everywhere? And talked about in the letter to the editor about some of the health concerns and things like that, which I can understand it. If you're a marijuana smoker, it's no big deal to you. If you're not, it's a big deal to you. Is this something that should elected officials should get involved? I mean, is this just like, hey, when you go outside you got to deal with it? Should something be done about this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an issue in public spaces. I mean, look, any event that you go to around the city these days, a concert, a comedy show, a festival, opening day, I mean, it's going to be there and it's going to be pronounced. I mean, I've been at events and people who are right in front of you are, just smoking away, and you get a contact buzz just from being in the vicinity.
Hopefully that isn't before this show, is it, Kevin? Because I want to make sure you're lucid. I want to make sure you're articulate.
I know some of my takes might seem like that sometimes. I'm sure.
I've been suspicious, to tell you the
truth. But yeah, man. I mean, if you don't smoke it, which I don't. That's not what I do. It can be annoying. It can be bothersome. And I think particularly when you're at indoor events, I would like to see a better job being done of policing it. Look, I'm not trying to crap on anybody having a good time. I realize that it's that it's legal, but it's just like the rest of our smoking laws. You can't go into a restaurant and light up a cigarette these days because restaurants and a lot of businesses figured out not only the health implications, and there'll be people who will argue that you don't have the same sort of health concerns with marijuana that you do with tobacco and cigarettes. But I think the greater point is that when you're in public spaces like that, people have the right to not have to inhale and deal with your smoke. And I think in the same way they dealt with it with cigarettes, they maybe need to take a same look at doing it with marijuana and just saying, hey, in public spaces, particularly indoor spaces, this is just not something that's allowed. And right now, it's not being policed real heavily. I think there are probably a lot of different reasons for that. Political reasons, law enforcement reasons. Look, if the police spent all of their time tracking down people who were smoking weed these days, they'd probably be doing nothing else. So I get it from that particular standpoint, but I think eventually it's going to come to a head where I think enough people are going to raise concerns about it that I think lawmakers are going to have to address it in some way.
Okay. You want to jump in there, Phil, or you want me to go ahead?
I want to jump in. I'll let you go first if you like.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You want me to? Okay. Well, let's just say, first of all, I did go to college in the 70s. Maybe I should just leave it at that. But I believe I did a little commentary on my own podcast. I actually believe in drug legalization across the board. I think the drug war has been one of the greatest failures of this country, and it's resulted in people being jailed for years for things that today we think is fine. I think the whole and the money and these what allows these cartels to thrive and kill people is all because of drug legalization, or illegal, making it illegal. But I totally agree with Kevin. I think it should be regulated in public places just like cigarettes are. And you talk about, you don't need to use the police. If somebody walks into a theater and starts smoking a cigarette, well, Lauren Boebert, that's a different situation. But if somebody walks into a theater and starts smoking a cigarette, the management is going to say, hey, put that out or leave. And I think if they're at a concert, somebody's smoking dope, same thing. I think that, it's just something that's against the rules and ought to be enforced.
Yeah. Isn't marijuana already covered by like the no smoking indoors ordinance?
I'm sure it is, but I think
Yeah.
like Kevin was referring to, I got the sense of places like Riverbend or outdoor places, but I would think that at those places, the management should treat it just like cigarette smoking. I mean, the management of these concerts could say, hey, you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes. You're not allowed to smoke weed. I mean, so,
I think
I
that's
think that's how
entirely
it
fair.
Hmm?
No, I think it's entirely fair, like to look at marijuana smoke, secondhand marijuana smoke, the same as we do secondhand cigarette smoke. The health argument, I agree with. Let me back up here because Phil, you said something that I'm never going to let you forget. You
Yeah.
just said that you were in favor of regulation. You said you were in favor of regulation. That's going to come back. Don't forget that.
Excuse me, sir. I didn't use the word regulation, I
Yeah, you
believe.
said use the word regulation. That's
Let's
what you
have,
said.
as I used to say in court, let's have the court reporter play that back. Okay.
I,
I don't
I
believe
am
that
the
was the
court
word.
reporter. 100%. You said it because
No,
my eyes and
Kevin,
I
I
perked up.
said legalization. I didn't say regulation.
No, you said it should be
Yeah.
regulated. That's exactly what you said, and I will play the
No, I
tape back
said
for
it
you
should
on
be
next
legal.
show.
I did not say that, though.
You,
Though, look, any product that is legal, bread is regulated. Okay, sausage is regulated. You can't do there's certain rules about how it can be, how you can sell or produce sausage, things like that. So obviously, any activity that's legal, there's always some level of regulation. But
okay?
my point was not that we need more regulation. And in some sense, I'm saying we need less regulation because right now, if you smoke or not snort cocaine or do any of these things, and for a long time marijuana, you were arrested and made part of the criminal system. And so in a sense, I'm saying I want less regulation.
Right.
I think these things should be legal. Yeah. And also, by the way, when you legalize and, as you say, regulate them, you actually protect people because at least they can make sure that whatever you're buying is, not poisonous or something like that.
Okay, just remember regulation good for people. I love it. We'll come back to that at some point in the near future, I know. But
Nathan, these words I know are going to come back to haunt me. There's no question
absolutely.
about it.
I
I see it
absolutely.
right now. You know,
Oh yeah, I'm showing it to you. You're gonna
my
definitely see it and hear
chance,
it again.
just because of you two guys, my chance for any future political office, it's none.
Good.
It's buried. Not a chance.
Now you gotta come to the left side. We got space for you over here. Come on over here. But you know what? The more I think about this, it's like a slippery slope. So I hear the health argument. I've been out before, and I just I don't want to do it. Like if I want to do it and I want to deal with the effects of it, I want it to be my own choice. But to Kevin's point, I've been in places where you start to feel something, and that's not what I came for. I don't want that kind of party. So I understand that. And just like secondhand cigarette smoke could be dangerous, I believe, although I can't quote any specific studies, that secondhand marijuana smoke can have a negative impact on somebody's health as well. And I think that should be addressed. But how do you address it, guys? Because my fear is that if we deputize, for lack of a better word, if we put a battery in the back of law enforcement and say, hey, go after these people who are smoking marijuana, it just seems like that's going to create a big problem,
No,
right?
I
I
don't think
think
that's
somebody,
what anybody. I don't think that's what anybody's saying. I think if you look at how we treat cigarette smoke in a public place, whether indoor or outdoor, I don't think we're telling cops to go around and start arresting people for smoking cigarettes. But whichever facility, if it's a river bend or if it's a stadium or whatever it is, if you smoke a cigarette there, they're going to somebody. You can go up to the usher, wherever. They're going to say, "Hey, pal, out of here." Same thing. I don't think, or if it's a facility, if it's a place where you have police, but they're on a detail, they're off duty, you know,
yeah.
and same thing. So I think it can be done without getting the law enforcement community
I,
involved.
I don't think so. I think the only way it can be dealt with is law enforcement. Because if I'm smoking weed somewhere and some Joe Blow come over and say something to me, depending on how he or she says it or my disposition, I'm just gonna blow you off.
Okay,
It's
but
gonna
what
be
if that
law
person then
enforcement.
goes up? What if that person goes to wherever it is, the manager or something, says there's a guy smoking with? The chances are the manager, whoever's in charge, is gonna go and deal with it,
Yeah,
just
and
like
Yeah.
cigarettes.
if they come over to me or somebody, I can see this happening. If you go over to somebody, and depending on who that person is, how they built, their mentality, they're just gonna blow them off. Like the only recourse they have is to call law enforcement, and I just feel like that opens a door where bad things can happen.
Yeah, I think so. Here's what I think, and here's where I kind of agree with Phil. So let's just say if you're going to an indoor concert venue or a restaurant or what have you, and I look at it in the same vein as, like, a lot of places have signs that say things, not just with smoking, but you can't bring a concealed weapon, into a lot of these places. Like, even though CCWs are legal and owning guns are legal, places have restrictions where they say you cannot bring these things in here. And in the event you're caught with that, you can be asked to leave by that establishment. And then if you refuse to leave, then yes, law enforcement might have to get involved. Now that's on you. I look at it, I don't see that as a societal problem. If you're not following the rules of a venue or whatever, and you're asked politely to discontinue, and you want to blow that off, then you've invited law enforcement into the situation. So for people like that, I don't have any sympathy for, if you're not going to follow the rules or respect the decorum of a venue. I do think what you're talking about, Nathan, and I think where it does get trickier is where you're talking about sort of big outdoor events like Taste of Cincinnati or Oktoberfest or the Cincinnati Music Festival or something like that are Riverbend, all of
Mhm.
these venues that are sort of like these outdoor venues where you've got hundreds of thousands of people out there. I mean, theoretically, there's no usher that you can go get in a venue like that. If you're somebody who's around people who are smoking, it's mostly if you have law enforcement that are there for some security purposes, who you would probably have to get involved in that type of environment or in some type of way. And that goes to my point earlier, why I think that it hasn't happened for exactly the reason that Nathan articulated. I think there's a political aspect of it where police don't want to get involved in, one, policing that to that extent, and two, some of the negativity that would come from negative interactions with people who are engaging in that in the public spaces. So I think that's some of the reason why we don't see, because the officers are out there. Look, you've got CPD officers who are out at these events and they see and they smell it
Yeah.
just like everybody else. And they don't say anything or do anything about it either. They don't even ask people to put it out, mainly because they don't want to get involved in it.
And they shouldn't. If it's an outdoor event, I'm glad you made that distinction between indoor and outdoor. An outdoor event, leave them alone. If you don't like it, move to the other side of the venue. If you don't want your kids to be around that, well, take your kids with you to the other side of the venue. You're outdoors. Let everybody enjoy the sun. Some people want to smoke their marijuana. Let them smoke their marijuana. It's just one of those things. I think we just got to deal with it, because if we over police it and crack down on it, it becomes a bigger problem, in my opinion. Right? Indoor, I get you. Okay. Outdoor, hey, it's from the earth. It's going back to the earth. That's the way I look at it.
So Don Lee had a good comment in here. He said, "Can we just have designated marijuana areas, much like for cigarette smokers?" So what if you did have an outdoor event like that, and let's just say you had a designated spot where it's like, hey, if you want to go over here and spark up over here, this is the spot to do it, and leave everybody else alone. That might be, that might be a solution to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get with that, but you're always gonna have some rule. You're always gonna have rule breakers.
Yeah,
So if you tell them to be over here, they're gonna want to walk around and be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Which like goes back to your point though, Kevin. You're like, hey, listen, we made a space for you, and you're still saying, hey, I'm gonna disregard this and do what I want to do. Okay, now I'm a little bit more open to the idea of law enforcement at least saying something, and then it's got to be the right law enforcement. We don't need Conan the Barbarian with a badge. We don't need that guy. We don't need that. We need the person that can talk things through, level-headed, de-escalate, not
one
trying to do
one barbarian to another.
One barbarian to another. I can understand. You don't need somebody like me with a badge, right? at least this
Amen
iteration
to that.
of my persona.
Amen to that.
You don't need that. We need somebody with a level head who has been taught how to deal with people, even difficult people, right? And learn and know how to de-escalate. Not all officers have that. They're not all the same. So yeah, I'm okay with that. That makes sense. Because I feel for it. When I read it, I was like, yeah, I've been there before. And I'm like, I've even tried to escape it and I can't even get away from it.
Right.
So I end up just leaving, right? And it's like, I didn't complain. I'm like, let them have their weed and I'll just go do what I'm going to do somewhere else. So.
And that's cool. That's cool if you can move. But let's just say you paid for a seat, or, you paid your money for a seat to be somewhere and you can't move without giving up your spot, because they're not going to just let you stand in some area or something like that. And I think that's where, somebody made the point. I think Anthony was talking about, hey, what if kids are around and that sort of thing. And to me, I think like there's just a general lack of respect, I think, that we have for each other these days, like in certain spaces. So it's like, man, I might want to smoke my weed. I might want to have a good time. But if I see some little kids like where I'm at, even though I have the right to do it, like part of the respect is saying, hey, there's little kids around. Let me move to a different space, or let me put this out, while the kids are not around. And I just think there's just very much a selfishness, and people just care about themselves and the good time that they're having, and they could give a damn about how their good time impacts you. And I think that that's one of the unfortunate things about how we move in society these days, is that we don't really have a general care or respect, even to the point where if somebody asks you nicely, like, hey man, could you put that out, just because I might have asthma, or I might have, something like that. I might have a breathing condition. Man, people ain't trying to hear that. You might get cussed out if you say that to the wrong person who's trying to have a good time. And so
there's a bit of a double standard here, I think, because we've all been at football games or other events where a bunch of guys are obviously kind of intoxicated and can be a real kind of annoying, and more than annoyance, sometimes really hassle other people. And so it works both ways. I mean, you don't hear somebody saying, "Oh, let's stop, make beer illegal or something." So it works both ways.
But they do have, well, first of all, they do have these jerk hotlines now. If you at the Reds or the Bengals game, so if somebody does get intoxicated like that, sloppy drunk, talking crazy as a result of the alcohol, you can dial a number and they will come get that person and escort them out. I've seen it done.
Yeah.
So venues have tried to address that, but I think it's different because alcohol, unless I'm behind the wheel of a car driving it, or unless I'm acting crazy, somebody having a beer doesn't directly affect me in the same way that somebody blowing smoke in your face does. So I do think there are subtle differences with that. And I do think places have tried to address, people who get overly intoxicated and are negatively impacting people around them experience. They will come and get them.
Let's move on, guys. I appreciate that. So we need designated smoking spots, or I think we already got them. We just need people to have some respect. Because I'm with you. If I was a weed smoker and I'm an outdoor weed smoker and I see little kids, I'm just not going to do it in front of them like that for a variety of reasons. And one of that is I don't want you to catch my secondhand contact. Like, I care, about impacting your health, whether you're my child or not. But, everybody is different. I get it. We talked about, I heard the word disrespect come up a couple times, and people are saying that Jasmine Crockett said something that was really disrespectful about Governor Greg Abbott. He's the governor of Texas, and a big supporter of Donald Trump. And I'm gonna play this clip for you. Then I've got another clip of her talking with reporters. But check this out. You tell me if she said anything wrong or if she should apologize. Check this out.
Because we in these hot ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess, honey. So
that's a rep from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. She was at the human rights campaign event, I believe it was, and she made that comment. And she's been taking some heat. The Republicans are really trying to use her to deflect away from Signalgate, which is getting worse and worse and worse. Here's another clip of her being chased by a reporter who is demanding an apology. Check this out.
I put out a statement regarding that.
You didn't apologize.
I put out a statement. Why would I apologize when I put out a statement? My statement was clear.
But you didn't apologize for calling him Governor Hot Wheels when he gets around in a wheelchair.
I don't know how that's offensive. I don't understand.
People have a disability.
You need me to repeat this to you.
Right, but why won't you apologize?
I put out a statement.
They didn't have an apology.
So read my statement.
I did read it. It did not have an apology.
Okay, well, I'm done with
You
this.
don't feel bad about making fun of someone
I'm done with this.
is an
Yeah, so there she was being pressed for an apology. In her statement, she said she wasn't directly trying to ridicule him. She was trying to make some other points about his policies and the way he's running the state of Texas. But what do you think? Do you think that she was out of bounds? Should she apologize? What's your take?
Look, we live in a political environment where you don't apologize, you double down on what you said. Now, personally, I read her statement. She said she wasn't referring to the fact that he was in a wheelchair. I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think maybe it was kind of a little bit of a shot at that. I mean, Jasmine Crockett is not one who is known for barring it. I mean, she takes on pretty much anybody and speaks her mind and has, cracked all manner of jokes, whether it's on Marjorie Taylor Greene, or I can't remember what she called Marjorie Taylor Greene. But it was something that was a very hot take and pretty funny as it pertained to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I wouldn't be surprised if that actually was what she meant. But here's where I'm at with it. Look, we shouldn't be making fun of anyone's disabilities or anything like that. I'll say that, and I have to take her at her word. She said that wasn't what she meant. With that. But let's just say for the sake of argument, it shouldn't be anything that we're doing. But what I find hypocritical, though, is that those on the right who worship and basically follow behind a man who has made a political career out of belittling everybody, out of belittling the flaws, disabilities, whatever he can, name calling, whatever he can about anyone who is a political opponent of his. I find that hypocrisy laughable, that there's outrage on the right, even if that was what she said, because it's no more than what their standard bearer does. I mean, let's not forget when he was on the campaign, this was the same guy who made fun of a handicapped reporter on stage, literally made fun of a handicapped reporter on stage. And nobody on the right thought to say anything about that, criticize him in any way about that. So I think this is just more of the whataboutisms. It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, you guys wanted to get on Donald Trump about stuff that he said about the handicap reporter and other things. Well, what about when a lib says it? What about when a Democrat says it? Where's the outrage? Like, that's what they're fishing for there, is the whataboutism. And they're trying to pin it on Jasmine Crockett. And that's really all it's about. Look, I say this. Every Republican talking point these days is a cover and a deflection for Donald Trump. That's what it is. It's whataboutism and a deflection and a cover for Donald Trump in some way, whatever it is, because when Donald Trump has been called, and rightfully so, called out on the carpet over the objectionable things that he said, they're looking for a defense for it. And their defense for it is, see, liberals do it too.
Phil, what's your take?
With all due respect for my friend Kevin, I think, Kevin, you're the one that's engaging in whataboutism. This was a cruel and disgusting comment, and I have no doubt that was the purpose of it, and not whatever BS excuse she came up with. But even if you say, "Oh, she wasn't talking about he's in a wheelchair," she still should have apologized and said, "Look, I didn't mean it that way, but if it was taken that way, I'm sorry." Okay? And the problem with what she said there, which it's only one comment, but you know what? This is what the Trump people are going to use to excuse all of his vulgar, mean-spirited personal attacks. I guarantee you that comment is going to live on forever. Okay? And she, I just, look, let's forget the whataboutism, which that was a terrible thing to say, just like when Trump, that favorite thing where he made fun of the disabled reporter. It's equally bad. And we who are, say, the anti-Trump people, we need to call that out on her, just like we do on Trump.
Yeah,
I would just add, Phil, I did say that. I think at the beginning of my comments, I said making fun
of. But your main point was kind of but what about them? That was
my main point was exactly what I said, is that we shouldn't be making fun of those things. But I think the hypocrisy on the right, the fake outrage on the right, is hypocritical, and it is. And
what about our lack of outrage? Let's say the Democrats haven't criticized her. What about that lack of outrage?
I can't speak for every Democrat. I can only say what I said.
Yeah, she said something about Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was a bad built, butch body, something like that.
Yeah, that was personal. That can be. Keep in mind on that, that was preceded by Marjorie Taylor Greene turning what Jasmine Crockett had made a comment and that she didn't agree with, and Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about her makeup or eyelashes or something. So as far as I'm concerned, the beach blonde bod, whatever, was given those circumstances, I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, there's a difference between that kind of a comment, especially when it's retaliating something, and making a joke about somebody who's disabled.
No, I hear you on that. And I read that disability advocates are not happy with Jasmine Crockett. The quote that I read is that they were disappointed and that the stigma is real, but that they know her and they're still willing to work with her and give her a second chance. So if she owes anybody an apology, for me, is not Greg Hot Wheels Abbott. It's people who are disabled and all the folks who are advocates for the disabled. If she owes anybody an apology, it's them. Greg Abbott to me is a reprehensible individual.
He is, but that doesn't mean you insult him for his disability.
You're right about that. It doesn't. But I'm not that upset about it. What I would say to Jasmine Crockett is don't get caught up in trying to go viral. That's what I would say to her in private. She had so much success and found, and went viral with the comments about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sometimes when you have those kind of moments, you kind of get caught up in trying to recreate it. And then as I watched, and I didn't watch the entirety of her speech because it was too long, but I watched some more of it. As I watched it, not everybody is comfortable in front of people. Sometimes people get kind of caught up in the moment and they go for a punchline. And I think that she's got Greg Abbott on her mind for various reasons. And it just came out wrong, in my opinion. I don't think it was funny. If she was going to make some kind of comment about him being in a wheelchair, she could have did a more witty, a better job of it. If that even is possible, because some will say it's a low blow. But Greg Abbott is a reprehensible individual who
Well,
some have said is responsible for the deaths of people. In particular, I mean, if I take you back 1 year ago, January 2024, the first Friday, you had federal border agents who observed 6 migrants who were trying to cross the Rio Grande, and they were in distress. And they tried to help those individuals, but they were blocked by Texas state troopers who were under orders from Greg Abbott. They were blocked from actually issuing
that's irrelevant.
assistance.
That's irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant to my point. So let me get it all out.
Okay.
So he blocked customs agents from giving aid to these migrants. 3 of them died, a mother and 2 children. So again, I say, to me, Greg Abbott is a reprehensible individual, and I don't really have a lot of sympathy for him. I got more sympathy for other disabled people. But he's not going to get a pass for being reprehensible just because he's in a wheelchair. And to Kevin's point, these Republicans are straight up hypocrites. They've said nothing about all the name calling. I thought this was par for the course. This is what we do now. We call names. We ridicule people and their weaknesses and their disabilities. We think it's funny. Whatever happened to the right saying that the left can't take a joke? It was a joke. At the RNC, at the campaign events, they was telling jokes about Mexico is a trash bin or whatever they said it was. It was funny. So this is funny. It's just a joke, right? Whatever happened to just telling a joke in humor? That's what I would say to the people on the right.
Yeah,
it was a joke. Can't take a joke now?
Well, there are good jokes and there are ugly jokes, okay? And if you recall, and this comes back to our previous discussion about, we were talking about something to do with the state, with his speech in front of Congress. And I quoted Michelle Obama and suggesting that you were saying that when they go low, we go low. And that to me is an example of that. By the way, let's talk about an example where you can be a little insulting, a little funny, but not cruel. Okay. Do you remember when George W. Bush was running for governor of Texas against, what was the woman? She's passed away. The woman, you know what I'm talking about? Guys,
The woman that passed away.
No, she was running. He ran. What's her name? I'll think of it. Somebody in the chat will say it. She was the governor of Ann something or other. Ann, I'll think of it. Richards, something like that. Richards, I think. She's governor of Texas. George W. Bush is running against her, and she had a line in the campaign where she said, "The problem with George W. Bush is he was born with a silver foot in his mouth." And I think that to me is a perfectly acceptable and classic jab, and it's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. That's a far cry from what Crockett said.
It's a little more witty. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Nathan on this point that, one of the things that would have been good for her was to go, or I think you might have intimated this as well, Phil, is it would have been good for her, if not to apologize directly to, if she didn't want to apologize directly to Abbott, she should have apologized directly to the disabilities community. Because again, even if that wasn't her intention, or that making that joke at his expense, I think, as you said in their statement, the stigma is real. And while people might laugh at it because it's Abbott, it might give other people license to think that they can make those same jokes about people with disabilities. And so I do think that there's a sensitivity there that she would have been better served by just saying, if you didn't want to apologize to Greg Abbott and you wanted to stand by your statement, you can say, look, I'm not going to apologize to him. But if anybody misinterpreted what I was saying as a shot at somehow or another the disabilities community, I want to apologize for everybody who is represented there. And, like you said, the stigma is real or whatever. And I don't want to do anything to contribute to that. I think if she'd done that, it would have been perfectly fine and she could have moved on. And if people had continued to press her about apologizing directly to him, I think that's something that she could have, continued to stand on had she done that other thing. And that would have been the smart and sort of wise thing to do again.
And the contrast between that and the issue, I think Nathan brought up about the Signal chat, the chat that was on that Signal thing that everybody's been talking about, is it, and who said this? I saw an interview. He was Obama's Hagel, former Republican Senator Hagel from Nebraska, who was Obama's defense secretary. He's talking about that, and he goes, all they needed to do is just say, we screwed up. Okay? We screwed up. Or somebody says, it's my fault. But, and just like you're in effect saying what she should have done. And, if she had said that, as Kevin had apologized in one fashion or another, it would have been a great contrast to Trump, who never apologizes for anything. Or the Hegseth and those other guys who, you know what they did? They attacked the reporter. All the reporter did was print what was texted to him. Okay, but they went after him. And it just shows that I think generally when scandal or something like that happens, the people in this country are forgiving when you admit it and say I was wrong. But when you try to dodge it and try to manipulate, come up with excuses, it's just very pathetic. Poor leadership.
I also think, Phil, I agree with you 100%, but I also think that we have to recognize that in many ways, what you're talking about is a throwback to, unfortunately, what is a bygone era. Because what I think we see more often these days, and I think Trump has created it and coined it, is this never apologize, double down on where you are type.
Yeah.
And it's not, and you don't just see this in politics. I mean, you see this across the board in a lot of other places where people have made the calculation that saying I'm sorry doesn't necessarily buy you all of the benefits these days that you once got, back in the day, if you just sort of fell on the sword. And so I think the calculation that a lot of people are making now is just don't apologize, because it's going to be no worse for me if I don't apologize. And in fact, in many ways, it might be worse for me if I do apologize. And so I think that these are the times and the environments that we're living in now that makes it different, where we are in a never admit you're wrong, never apologize state, and I don't know how we get out of that.
Well, I'll tell you something. It's very interesting that a lot of the people who wear their Christianity on their shirt, on their sleeve, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, they don't follow what the Bible tells us. The Bible says we confess our sins to one another. Okay, when we, if you want to call it sin or do something wrong, we're supposed to admit it. And it is kind of disgusting to me that people like her and others who are Mike Johnson, the guys who are always wearing the Bible on their sleeve, and yet this principle is one that they don't follow.
I think that's a lot to put just on her feet. Has the times changed? Oh, absolutely. As we were talking about this, I remember Lloyd Austin when he got lost for a couple of weeks because he was having some kind of surgery. When he came back, he apologized. He said, I was wrong. So it's not everybody. It just depends on the individual and the circumstances. But I'm not super upset about it, primarily because of who it is. Who Greg Abbott can kick rocks. That's how I feel about him and his policies.
Okay, well, let's say Greg Abbott was Jewish, and she said said that damn Jew or something like that. Would you excuse that because of how bad
I would
guy
say
he
I
is?
don't think those are the same.
Or if he was black, used a pejorative term, same thing.
If
Would
he
you
was,
say, oh well, he's a bad person, so I don't
If he
care
was
about calling
black
him that.
and Jewish and had the same record as Greg Abbott and Jasmine Crockett said Governor Hot Wheels, I'd feel the same way. You know,
Well, no, I'm not talking about Governor Hobbles. I'm saying if somebody, doesn't have to be her, somebody used whatever, the N-word or some anti-Semitic
I
thing
think that's a terrible comparison.
to him, would your position be well, yeah, it shouldn't have done
I
it, but
think that's a
I don't
terrible
really have much.
comparison.
I don't care about it because
I
he's
think
a
that's a
terrible
terrible
person.
comparison. I mean, somebody using the N-word.
So you're saying making an anti-Semitic or or a racist comment is not as bad or is worse than making
I just
light
think
of a
that's a
disability.
terrible. There's no comparison between what she said and possible racism.
I think there's a complete comparison. They're both degrading, insulting,
Yeah, but one is way over here.
mean-spirited
Like
things.
the racist stuff is way over here, and the other is she said something about Governor Hot Wheels. There's just no comparison whatsoever,
That's your
Phil.
view.
Yeah, here's Nathan. Here's where I might push back on that a little bit. And I always
come
say
on.
it seems like it's worse when you're not a part of the group. You know, it's the same. I look at that. I look at kind of like what you're
Yeah.
saying is the same thing that some white people say to black people when it comes to racism type things.
Yeah.
Like none of us are disabled, at least as far as I know. So to be able to sit in that seat and say what is more offensive, you know, to someone who suffers from a disability by someone who doesn't suffer from that, I don't think any of us are in a position to say what's offensive and what's not offensive to somebody or with a disability, or what's worse or what's not. So I don't think that's an argument that we want to make here. I mean, I think what you're saying is you don't have any sympathy for the man, which is fine. I think you cannot have any sympathy for the man, but also say, look, we do need to be careful that even in our criticisms of other people, that we're not inadvertently dragging others who don't need to be stigmatized or who don't need to be brought into it. Look, I'm not going to say she got caught up in the moment. Look, Jasmine Crockett had prepared that line. That was not anything that she just came off of with the off the top of the cuff.
Yeah.
She had prepared for that. She was ready to deliver for it, because she came right back with the only thing that's hot about him is he's a hot mess. Look, you don't just come up with that off the top. She had prepared those remarks. She was ready to deliver it. And that's why I kind of think, like, I'm not really buying her explanation in the aftermath. Look, she don't have to apologize for it. It's her. She's the one who has to stand behind it. But I think that, if we believe that everybody deserves respect and dignity, and we don't want to inadvertently degrade other groups, then I think we got to call that out. That don't mean I'm defending Greg Abbott or any of the things that he's done. That's just saying that if we're gonna say that we believe in certain things and that certain things are wrong, then they got to be wrong in every case, not when they're just said against people we don't like.
Yeah, but that's not really the argument. Though.
Another thing.
That's not what
I'm
trying to compare what Jasmine Crockett said to somebody using the N-word or some type of racial epithet is ridiculous. They're worlds apart.
Well, Kevin's saying if you were disabled,
I am
you might
disabled.
Not
I got
say
sciatica. I might
That's
be in a
what Kevin's
wheelchair at some point in my life.
Nah, or well, and if you were, I wonder.
I would
if
feel the same. I'm telling you how I feel about it. It doesn't matter whether I'm in a wheelchair or not.
Kevin's just pointing out when you're not a member of the oppressed or the discriminated against class, you sometimes
I don't
are
have
less
to
sensitive.
listen. I don't have to be disabled to
That's what
know
he's saying.
that comparing her comment to using the N-word is worlds apart. It's two completely different things.
Okay, that's your opinion. I don't agree.
So you think they're on the same? You're telling me that her calling him Governor Hot Wheels is the same as her using a racial epithet? That's what you're telling me.
Yes,
that's ridiculous.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why. Well, I'll tell you why that is.
I want to hear that.
If you're a member of a particular race or religion, whatever, and somebody says that kind of insulting thing in one form or another, in some ways, I think you can at least feel a sense, because there are many, many, obviously, other people who are the same race or color, whatever it is. If I can tell you this, if I was in a wheelchair and somebody on any level made a joke about my disability, given the struggle that people have who are in that, I find that very, very hurting.
But Phil, that is nowhere compared to the history of the N-word. Black people heard that word. The last thing they heard hold on.
Well,
Here-
then
here's a better
maybe
Hold on,
it's a
hold on,
joke.
hold on.
Maybe
here's
it's
a
a
better
Let me
joke
make the
about
point,
blacks
though. Let
not
me make the
using the
point.
N-word.
Black people, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, if not more than that, heard the N-word is the last word they heard as they were murdered, as they were raped. And you're going to sit here and tell me that using the N-word is the same
Okay.
as her saying Governor Hot
Okay.
Phil,
Wheels?
let me help you.
Let's let's
Let me
just say
try
for
to
purpose of
let me
discussion,
kind of try
not
to
the
help.
Historically, it doesn't make sense.
Let me help you out,
It made
Phil,
no sense
because
whatsoever.
I get where Nathan's going, and I get what you're trying to say, and the comparison. What Nathan is talking about is a direct sort of historical slur versus what might be a tasteless joke.
A tasteless joke, right?
That Jasmine Crockett. So a better comparison, Phil, which might relate to, is let's just say if when Barack Obama was president, if a white congressperson had said something about, let's just say if Barack Obama had been sort of back and forth on an issue during a press conference, if he had said, look at Barack Obama up there looking like Mr. Bojangles, that might be
Yeah, exactly.
a more
Exactly. That's a
appropriate
good
comparison
comparison.
to what Jasmine
Exactly.
Crockett did. It's not
Yeah,
a direct slur, but
I agree.
it's definitely an implication of something
Yeah.
that is derogatory, right? And so that's the
Right. I
point. It's
agree.
not as loaded as the N-word or a slur, but it definitely sends a clear message.
Even
Yeah,
that's
I'll
not
buy
the
that.
same.
I think that's a
Even
great
that's
example.
not the same, but
Great
I
example.
think it would be, I think that's about as close as you can get, Nathan, to where Phil I think was trying to go. Look, nobody's going to say that what
Right.
she
Exactly.
said was a slur, right? That it was a slur, but it was definitely a
It was
derogatory
a
sort of
joke.
nickname. It was definitely a derogatory nickname that was attached,
Of course,
that
it
could
was
be
a joke.
attached to somebody who's in a wheelchair. I mean, there's no denying that. There's no denying that. She didn't mean it as a compliment. She didn't mean it as a compliment. She wouldn't have said it if she meant it as a compliment. It was clearly meant to be derogatory and to make fun. Otherwise, why say it?
And you know, another thing that I think comes to mind is that even people who we disagree with and don't respect, you can still acknowledge some positive things about them. I'll tell you, my arch opponent on Cincinnati City Council and the County Commission was the late Todd Portune. Okay, and Todd and I, we went at it. We worked together on a few things, but basically we went at it. And I, frankly, again, he's passed away and all, but I felt he was a bit of a what's the word? Well, I'll think of the word in a minute, but not always sincere. Let's say in his motives, it was more political than otherwise. Okay, that was just kind of our thing. But I would always say that I really respected his perseverance, because this guy, if you recall, had these terrible tumors, and he was basically confined to a wheelchair, but it didn't stop him. I mean, he was at every meeting. He did everything. He didn't let that disability stop him. And whether I said it at the time, I can't remember. I respect that. So I think, and Greg Abbott, whatever else you want to say about him, and I'd agree with you guys about him. He was injured not as a child. He was an adult, and he was jogging. Tree fell on him, and I will give him credit for persevering and becoming governor of Texas with that
I ain't giving him credit
disability.
for nothing. You can. He ain't getting credit for nothing because this man stood by.
Okay. Well,
This
as I
man
said,
stood
we
by
can
as
agree to
3 human
disagree.
beings lost their life, and he did that purely for political reasons. So wherever he ends up in the afterlife, hey, maybe it was
Well,
foreshadowing.
okay.
It's gonna be a hot place. So
Well, just remember this. Even remember this about Mussolini. At least he made the trains
right.
run on time.
And Adolf Hitler, he built some roads, right? Isn't that what Marshall said? Hey, you know what, Kevin? You had a moment this week, man. You were moderating the first Cincinnati mayoral debate. And what are the highlights? What did we miss? I mean, it's is it up on Cincinnati.com? Because I know
It
at least
is. It
Iris
is there.
Rowley. Okay, so people can watch the video back there, right?
Yeah. If you go click on, I think there are a couple of stories that we've written post debate. The video is embedded inside of those stories. So if you go and search for any of the debate stories, you should be able to find the hour long video and maybe even a couple of highlights of some of the key moments.
So what were this is hot mic. So tell us the hot mic moments. Were there any hot mic moments?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of moments. I think probably the hottest moment was when I had asked Brian Frank, who was one of the Republican candidates running against Mayor Pureval, about a comment that he had made in the Cincinnati Business Courier about City Manager Cheryl Long being a DEI selection, and basically saying that if he were elected mayor, he would fire her. And so, obviously, when I read those comments, I was like, well, I got to definitely ask him about that, at the debate, because I wasn't even sure how aware, most Cincinnatians were that he'd even made that comment. And so when I asked him about it, he did apologize for the DEI comment. He said he was sorry about that, but then he went on for the next minute, just kind of ripping Cheryl Long about her level of competency. He brought up the time that her city-owned car got stolen, and he brought in her decision to fire the police chief, or the fire chief, Michael Washington, and really just kind of went on this minute or so rant about how she wasn't qualified for the job, and ended by pretty much saying that he would hope that if he were elected, he would hope that she would resign quietly, but if she didn't do that, he would get rid of her. And that caused AFTAB, Mayor Pureval, to rise to her defense pretty vigorously. Basically, he said he appreciated the policy, or his apology, but was pretty much disgusted by everything else he had said after that, and pretty much defended the city manager, saying that everything good that's happening in the city right now is largely due to her efforts, and that what does it take for a person of color to get the credit that they deserve for the work that they do. And he pretty much ended his comments by saying that if Frank wanted to attack somebody, he could attack him. But as far as the city manager was concerned, that she was well out of his league, that he wasn't even in the same league to be able to comment about her. So that was one of the more spicier moments of the evening. Other than that, we kind of tried to cover pretty much a lot of the main issues we thought people would want to hear about. The connected communities. Zoning reforms is a big issue in a lot of the different neighborhoods. We talked about the arena, where it should go, who should pay for it, do we even need it? Talked about whether the streetcar should be extended, how railroad funds from the railroad should be spent. So if I had to encapsulate the evening in its entirety, I would just say this. I would say, the mayor looked very comfortable. He probably recognizes and knows that in a blue city, it's going to be an uphill climb for either of these two gentlemen to really bring a challenge to him. I think Corey Bowman is really riding the J.D. Vance wave that I think exists with a lot of people on the right, that might be in the city. I think he's getting a lot of bounce from that. He had some people who came all the way down from Columbus, to support him. I mean, they can't vote in the Cincinnati election, but apparently the J.D. Vance juice is real, and it flows all the way to Columbus. And so he's going to probably get some of that. I don't think it's going to be enough for him to make a credible challenge to AFTAB in November. He'll probably be the Republican of the two, I would guess, that will probably come out of this primary season. But both of them, AFTAB's got an advantage. He's been in the seat. He's been the mayor. So when you talk about a lot of these issues, he has a lot more knowledge, a lot more history that these two guys can't really bring to bear. I mean, Brian Frank almost pretty much admitted that the only reason that he was in the race is because nobody else was running at the time that he filed his paperwork. And so he felt it was important to, and I'm paraphrasing here, go back and watch the tape yourself if you want to see exactly what he said. But that was the gist of his comment, that he didn't feel it was right for Mayor Pureval to run unchallenged. Nobody else had stepped up. And so that's why he was running, to bring up issues and have debate. So, which I don't entirely disagree with. I'm not a fan of unopposed races. I think that it's good to have somebody to stand up and challenge the incumbents, and they shouldn't get a free pass. And so for as much as they could, based on the qualifications and experience they had. They tried to bring that to bear, but I think it was clear to anybody watching that that AFTAB, pretty much had control of the evening.
Yeah, that would make sense. I didn't get a chance to watch all of it, but I did see the part in which he was going after uh, Cheryl Long, and I just thought the fact that there's an appetite for this, and this man can say this in public spaces is just bad commentary about where we are. So your number one thing in running is that you want the black city manager to leave or to be fired. Absolutely ridiculous, but this is what we see.
And in fairness, I wouldn't say that was his number one thing. That was he was responding to a question that I asked. So I wouldn't say that what I do think is fair to say, though, and he's made no bones about this, is that he's a big time Trump supporter and he wants to make Cincinnati great again. Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's been his tag. So if you want to, lump that, what you just said about the city manager in under that banner, then that's a little bit more fair than to say that's his number one issue. But I would say the number one thing that he's kind of put out there is this particular notion that he is 100% for Donald Trump and he wants to make Cincinnati great again. I think that's fair.
Yeah, something to keep in mind is sometimes you position yourself for another race by being the kind of suicide candidate, knowing you're going to lose, but maybe making a good showing, which could very well be his motivation. For example, you remember Brad Wenstrup ran, I think it was against Mark Mallory, I think, or maybe it was Cranley, but he ran, probably knew he didn't have a chance, but he made a pretty good showing for a Republican in the city, and then he became the candidate who won that congressional seat in District 2. So that could very well be what the motivation he is for. For
I mean, for Barney Frank, I'm sorry, what's the guy's name again?
Brian Frank.
Yeah, clown. It's a no for me. And then for Bowman, he's never even voted in a city race. Is that correct?
That's
and
correct.
Now you want to be mayor. I get it. I'm glad that somebody is running against him because I'm like you, Kevin. I don't like to see people run unopposed. I don't think it's good for us. I want to see you be challenged, even if you're somebody I like. I want to see AFTAB be challenged. I'm not sure if these guys are really up for the challenge, but it also speaks to these Republicans, man, that they are not satisfied with Cincinnati being a blue city. They coming for each and every city. So yeah, you should run somebody, see what sticks, see what works. You might get lucky. It may not be this race. To Phil's point, it may be another race down the line. People think that Cincinnati is always going to be blue. In these days and times, anything is possible in my head. So we'll see.
Keep in mind also, Nathan, the media, if you're, say, performing for the MAGA crowd, even in a race where the voters are never going to choose you, you're getting media coverage throughout all the suburbs. Okay. It doesn't stop at the city county line. So, and so you're basically on some level performing. So when whatever it's maybe not county commissioner, congressional, whatever seat, hey, remember what he said? Remember how he stood up to all those people, in the city? So I think that's it.
About it, it's like it's not a bad space to be. Like if that's your mentality, if you're Bowman, if that's your mentality, that's not a bad space to be in because you almost can't go wrong, right?
No,
right?
And
nothing to lose.
Absolutely, nothing to lose and everything to gain because it's like you already know. I mean, I just sat up here and said it. You already know that the deck is stacked against you in terms of winning. So, but you can't put a price tag on what this will do in terms of name recognition, getting you out there. Sometimes the election is the point. Running is the point, not necessarily winning being the point in every particular race. And if he somehow winds up miraculously catching lightning in a bottle, look, I'm telling you, the JD Vance juice is real. I mean, don't, I'm not saying that it's real enough for him to win the mayorship in Cincinnati, but I'm saying that alone is going to get him some attention that otherwise he probably doesn't really warrant or doesn't really deserve. But to say that you're JD Vance's half brother, I mean, that in and of itself is going to carry enough weight that some people are going to give him their vote simply on that alone. And him kind of going along, those same lines of arguing some of those positions. So that's just the real nature of politics. And so winning might not be the point for him in this particular election.
Got it. Let's move on. We did have Eugene with us. Eugene, call us back if you want to get on. He was backstage for a second, and I get it. People are busy. You can't really hold. If you want to call back in, call back in. When I see you backstage, I'll send you a message and bring you on as soon as possible. And I want to thank all the people for being here in the comments, and we'll try to get to some of the comments before we leave. But next topic, I want to play a video for you. This video, I think, it's been reported, but I think because of Signal Gate, it's kind of been lost and forgotten. Nobody's really talking about it as much as I think it deserves a little bit more attention, a bit more attention. And this video is of Kristi Noem. She is the Homeland Security Secretary. And well, check this out. We'll talk on the other side.
And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that
So, the Trump immigration TV show continues. She was in front or at a prison down in El Salvador, a very infamous prison known for, we'll just say it mildly, to being really, really tough on the inmates. And there were...
Nathan, if I could
let me get it all out, then jump on in.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to set up so people at home understand what's happening. So she was not in the United States. I don't know who those people were behind her, but she got a lot of criticism and pushback online just because of the staging of it. I mean, you got human beings who are bare from the waist up, just kind of standing behind her. But as I said, this is the Trump TV show. And it's sickening that there's an appetite for this type of entertainment. And that's what it is. If you want to give Trump credit for anything, give him credit for putting on a nonstop television show that people, primarily Fox, Newsmax, conservative media watchers are really, really plugging in every single day to see this. But she got criticized for many reasons, not the least of which is just the callousness, the grossness of it. Kind of staging human beings for political purposes. And when she was asked afterward, like, how long are these individuals going to be there? She couldn't even answer. What we're finding out now is that there were people who were taken from the streets of the United States and put in that prison, and they had nothing to do with this so-called gang that was based in Venezuela that Donald Trump said that had invaded the country. But I want to get your take on it.
What I started to say was, we were also going to be discussing the video of that Turkish student who's a Fulbright scholar who was just swept up by ICE. And I was just going to say, given that it's all in the same kind of subject, that you might want to show that too now.
Yeah, go ahead. You go with that? You go with that, Kevin?
Yeah, no, because I was going to mention it in my comments. So
yeah. Check this out.
I'll show you everything. Okay. Sure. Yep. It's fine.
Yeah, we're gonna take a
And what I would say, for every man, woman, and child that just saw that could be you. That woman's name is Rumeysa Ozturk. Hopefully I didn't mangle it too bad. She's actually here.
Who was here in this country
legally. She's a PhD student at Tufts University. And Some are saying that her crime is that she wrote an opinion piece, if not several opinion pieces, criticizing the way that the university was dealing with, the protest about what's happening in Gaza, and also she criticized Donald Trump. So we live in a country where, if you're the Secretary of Defense and you, oops, my bad, reveal battle plans before a battle and put pilots and American military servicemen and women in danger, no problem with it. But if you're a lawfully abiding citizen who wrote an opinion piece, this is what happens to you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tie the two videos that you just showed together because I absolutely think that they go together. First, the stagecraft is a part of what Donald Trump has mastered, whether you're talking about The Apprentice or the things that he has done here since over the course of 3 campaigns and 2 stints into the White House. Is he understands the power of media, the power of visuals, and setting the stage and the narrative and the story that he wants to tell. And that story is one of dehumanization. When you look at Kristi Noem standing in front of those jail bars and you see all of these brown-skinned men, head shaved, tatted up, it sends that image that they want to send to these people that these are animals who are caged behind bars. And this is the element that's being expelled from the United States. And when you look at that, it's designed to send you, it's more than just her standing in front of that talking tough. It's sending a message to not just any illegal, quote unquote, illegal people that they want to send a message to, is sending their message to their base saying, look, we're locking these animals up. And make no mistake, that is the message that they want to convey, that these people are animals. Just listen to the way that they talk about it. So why is that important to the second video that we showed? Is because it makes that type of action that much more acceptable to people who support that type of thing, that it makes them okay with law enforcement not identifying themselves, masked up, coming and snatching somebody off the street without even announcing who they are, without reading any kind of Miranda rights, without even having any official charges upon which to arrest somebody on, to take them, then not only take them from the place where they were arrested, but transport them to a detention facility in another state, right? And still no charges are against this woman. Has no charges against her, yet they're holding her. And so when you paint the picture that, hey, we're going to round up animals, you create a desensitizing situation for many people who are okay with that type of violation of human rights and rights, here in our country, of due process, of justice, and of all of these things that we claim to believe in, right? So Marco Rubio gets up and he talks about, hey, this person's here on a student visa and we have the right to revoke that if we think people are engaged in, destroying property and intimidating students and doing those things on our college campuses, we have every right to kick them out. Okay, fair enough. So what evidence do you have that this particular young lady was involved in any attacks on any students on the campus where she was at, that she was involved in any property damage or anything that was a threat to the United States, other than writing an op-ed saying that she felt that the university should disinvest from Israel because of what they were doing in Palestine? There have been plenty, listen, as the opinion editor at the Inquirer, there have been plenty of white folks who have written op-eds of that same ilk. So is Trump going to go around and start rounding those people up now because you wrote an op-ed that disagreed with him or with a position? It's a dangerous, slippery slope that we're in. And the message that he's sending is if you disagree, if you say anything that is counter to what we're saying, yeah, we're going to go after the international students right now because we want to try to tamp that down. But make no mistake, it won't stop there. It never does with Trump types and those types of authoritarian people who believe that if you don't get on my team, I am going to either find a way to expel you from the country, arrest you, or make it very difficult. Bill has brought this up with what Trump is doing by attacking law firms that work for Hillary Clinton. and the pressure of snatching federal funds from people who invest in DEI. All of these are bully and intimidation tactics that Trump is using to say, if you go against me, there are going to be consequences, everything from bankrupting you to possibly throwing you in jail, kicking you out of the country. Make no mistake, that's the message he sent.
Right. Right. Phil, you jumping in? You want me to go ahead?
If I can say, when I saw that video of that woman being arrested by masked people, and by the way, what she has in common with those guys down in El Salvador is there's no hearing, right? There's nobody's getting a hearing. So as you mentioned, Nathan, those guys who are in that jail in El Salvador, how do we know that we're all gang members? How do we know versus just having a tattoo or something? Because when you don't have a hearing, you basically have no chance to prove you're not that person. And what I thought about, though, when I saw about that video of the woman being swept off the street, is this quote that I think we all have heard from Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I think this is kind of what Kevin is saying. And what's interesting is, remember, the whole deportation was supposed to be illegals or illegal immigrants. That was supposed to be who was being deported. They've already, as Kevin kind of said, they've already stretched that now to people here legally who just write an editorial opposing Donald Trump. That's already been extended now to that, including the guy at Columbia and others. There's no question. The next step is going to be Father. Okay, the next step will maybe be Adam Schiff or somebody in the media who stands up to Donald Trump. There will be a pretense for that person to be swept up.
I'm not surprised to hear any of this, though. I'm not surprised to see any of what go ahead, Kevin. You want to jump in there real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick, and then I'm gonna let you have your flow because I want to address Ron D in the comments because he done had a lot to say. So I'm gonna read his comment here, and then I'm gonna show him what he's saying. We're saying is ridiculous, but then I'm gonna break it down and show him how what he just said is ridiculous. So Ron D says, "You don't know what the surveillance of these individuals." Hold up, let me get it. It just went down on my screen, so I got to pull it back up here if I can. Yeah, you don't know what the surveillance of these individuals yielded because people told you about 2025 agenda and all that old bull crap. Everything looks ominous, but you don't know what those individuals were planning or communicating. You know what, Ron D, you're absolutely right. I don't, and neither do you. And that is what should worry you, is the fact that they're snatching up people, not even giving them an opportunity in court and pushing them out of the country or detaining them with no charges filed. That should scare the hell out of all of us because we have a justice system and a due process that says, hey, look, if people are actively doing terrorism in the United States and doing nefarious things, absolutely, we all want them out of the country. Get them out. But I'm not just going to take your word for it because you say it's so without producing any evidence. That is a fool's position. To say that we trust the government. For people who don't trust the government when Democrats are in office, they sure as hell trust the government when Trump and those guys are in there. Look, none of us should be above saying that any authority in power ought to have to produce results, make a case, and show evidence before they convict, arrest, or detain anybody. That is the essence of our justice system. You don't just go up snatching around folks for no good reason. If you got a good reason, show your cards, show it in court, show it before a judge. That's not what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to snatch people up and get them out before the judge can even say anything. That's not how we should be doing things in America. And if you think that that is Ron D, then you're ridiculous.
Yeah, I was second that.
You can have the floor.
Yeah, I was second that completely. But you know what Ron D is a reflection of is that, and I'm not, I'm not surprised to see this, is that poll numbers suggest that the one thing that Donald Trump has support from, still high support from, is his immigration policy. There's a lot of people that love this. They like it. They love the TV show. They like seeing brown people incarcerated and led away in chains. They like seeing these, this kind of stagecraft where you got the Secretary of Homeland Security standing in front of, these men who are locked up. Look, what did they do to get those men to stand there like that? I was surprised nobody, threw a prison special letter. They must have been, I don't know, coerced or intimidated to stand there. I mean, this is just a travesty. But this is what I was afraid of. From the very beginning, this was not about so-called illegal migrants. This was always about a TV show for Donald Trump, for MAGA and Republicans, and a mechanism for Donald Trump to put force on people. This is not just about so-called migrants. This is about every person in America. Every adult who is watching this is being intimidated by it. And that's the point. They want you to be afraid. They want you to get in line. They want you to shut up. Don't write opinions that are negative or contrary to Donald Trump. Because, and let's be honest here, guys, they could knock on your door and pick you up right now. And there's nothing that anybody could do anything about it. Nothing. That you could be in Louisiana. That's the first stop. They take you down to this detention facility in Louisiana before your mama knows it, before your wife knows it, before your husband knows it. If you say, hey, I'm an American citizen, look at my ID. If they take your ID and throw it away, who's going to come get you? Nobody. There is no help. You could be in that prison for 6 months, 7 months, a year while they figure it out. You could be in down in El Salvador. You could be there in Venezuela right now. And there's nothing that anybody could do about it. And they'll just say in a year or so, oops, my bad. It was a mistake. They'll give you a little restitution and then you go on with your life. People should be very afraid about what they're seeing because this is a serious thing. This is not a game. This is very serious. And Ron and people like it want to play games because you think that you're untouchable. Sir, you are not untouchable. And if they pick up Ron tomorrow, who is he going to call? The NAACP, the ACLU. He going to be calling you, Kevin, trying to get a story in the paper. The same people you despise are the very same people you're going to be calling when you need help because nobody else is coming for you. You can't call Fox. They ain't coming for you. You can't call J.D. Vance. He don't care. The very same people that you criticize are the same people that you're going to want to throw you a lifeline if something happens to you. So I just find it ridiculous when I hear people making these kind of comments because you're sitting at home in the safety of your house. But somebody knock on your door and say, prove you're an American citizen. How do you prove that? How do you prove it? You can't.
Well, actually, you can, but the problem is these people aren't being given a chance. I mean, you pull out a passport or you pull out a visa, whatever, but these people are being sent away without any kind of hearing. That's the point. That's the issue.
And that's the point that people like Ron or MAGA folks are missing. Nobody is saying don't get the bad folks out of the country. That's not what anybody is saying. But there's a right way to do it. You can't just go around snatching up any and everybody because how often do we know that law enforcement don't always get it right? There are plenty of people who are on death row right now or who were on death row that got off death row because of some trumped up charges or bad DNA or whatever it is that you find out that they actually didn't do it. Let's not forget Donald Trump's favorite whipping boys, the Central Park Five, the ones he took out, a full page ad, who were completely innocent. He would have had them deported out of the country and probably shot if he had been president at the time. And he would have been wrong. So this is why you can have these type of, brown shirt Gestapo type tactics going on in the United States. That's not the way that we should be doing things. And just simply because you want to get rid of the bad guys don't mean you become one of them to try to get rid of them.
Twin is hilarious. He writes, I'd rather be dead and in jail than to let the NAACP or Al Sharpton save me. I'm calling Cap. Stop it. Child, please stop it. Please. When you struggling, you're going to reach out for any lifeline you got. Any lifeline. I know I would. If I'm in trouble, I'm calling J.D. Vance. I'm calling everybody. Not that they're going to answer, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I'm not going to reach out to anybody I can. Straight cap, twin. Straight crap. Straight cap, not crap. Straight cap. Straight cap. He'd rather be dead. Please. But let's move on. That was a good conversation. Yeah, go
Let
ahead.
me just say that one of the things that we forget, because we are in a democracy, is the Constitution is actually designed to protect not the majority, but the minorities. In other words, it's the Constitution is based on the fact that if you do not like the speech of someone, and if the majority of people in this country don't agree with that woman who was picked up for writing that op-ed piece, doesn't matter. The Constitution gives her that right, and it gives the other rights like rule of law and searches and seizures, that kind of thing. Those are not based on what the majority wants. They're based on protections that the founding fathers put in. And what we're seeing here, as you guys have talked about, is an erosion. It may be a slow one, but as a slow erosion of the rights in the
Oh, absolutely.
Constitution.
I would agree. We are watching that. We'll see what happens, though. I think good people slowly are waking up. Not enough people are woken up to what's going on, but more and more I'm seeing it. And I like what I'm seeing. I'm encouraged by it. So we shall see. That's all I got, folks. I got a couple more topics, but I'm thinking we might be better served to bring those in maybe next week if we can get some guests who can speak to it. So I'll end it right here. But as I always ask at the end of the show, speak now or forever hold your peace. Was there anything that was said today that you want to come back to and address?
Now, the only thing I'll say, although I didn't get the opening day, the Reds did red things yesterday, didn't they? I mean, it's like the same. I saw it coming. I said when it was 3-2, bottom of the ninth or top of the ninth, I'm sitting there saying to myself, man, this is where they always lose it. They always lose it with these late game relievers that they bring into the game when they have leads. And sure enough, not only did dude give up the game tying run, he gave up a 3-run homer right after that. I said, this is just unbelievable with 2 outs. So, new manager, new season, same old Reds. I know that's a lot to say after just one game, but they gotta figure out a way to. I don't know why they pulled Hunter Green. So Hunter Green was pitching a good game, man. Let Hunter Green have another inning or two before you pull him. It's early in the season. You ain't gonna wear his arm out in game 1. Get the opening day win, man.
While baseball is not my favorite sport to watch, every year I say the same thing to my wife, and I don't say it to my son because once I say it to him, I got to do it then. But I always tell her, like, I want to take Junior to a game, because there's something about going to the game, especially a night game. You got a hot dog. There's something about that I like, even though that's not my primary sport. But keeping the conversation on sports, I thought Phil might like this. I read that there's been a lot of movement in the transfer portal. It made me think about you, Phil.
It's exactly
Is that
what
right?
I was going to talk
Listen,
about.
we right here.
That was just what I
Yeah,
was
and I
just
wanted to
about
get your
to talk
thoughts on that.
about,
So
but
apparently
go
they've had
ahead.
a higher number than usual of collegiate basketball athletes who are entering the transfer portal while the tournament is still going on. And I think it was Tom Izzo. He said he used some word. He said it was basically horrible. The fact that so many players are using the transfer portal. And I thought about you, Phil. What's your take on that? You agree with Tom Izzo?
Well, we had a discussion on this once, and Kevin, I would never say I told you so. I'm not that kind of person. You know that.
I am.
But I have been
What?
disgusted by what I have seen. And I'll tell you one thing that, I've told you guys I love March Madness. This was the worst tournament I've ever seen. You know why? Because there were almost no upsets. There were almost no 15, 14 seeds, mid-majors who upset. And I think it was Stephen Smith said, and I fear he's right, that the problem is that those schools, whether it's Yale or whether it's Valparaiso, whatever school, they can't afford to pay the big bucks that Ohio State can, and the Maryland can, and North Carolina. They can't afford it. And so what we're first seeing, which is really tragic in my opinion, is basically the big money schools, the ones that can shell out the NIL. They're getting all the good players, and the chance of upsets is very slim. And another example of that I think you were alluding to, Nathan, is even right here, I watched Xavier about was it a week or a week and a half ago? I went up to Dayton and saw this fantastic game where they came from behind and beat Texas. Well, what happened a few days later? Sean Miller leaves to go to Texas. Okay, and now a bunch of the Xavier players, Conwan and others, now they're just going out there to find somebody, the highest bidder, I guess. So uh, I'm I'm just so truthfully disappointed. I love college football. I love college basketball, but I do
Can
not
I
like
play a
what's
video
become.
real quick, Kevin, before you go, of Tom Izzo? I haven't seen this,
Yeah,
but I
go
thought it
ahead.
might add to the conversation before
Yeah.
before you
Okay.
go ahead. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Yeah, I think I got. Here we go.
I got 15, 16 guys.
Hold on, it's got to refresh. Let me refresh it real quick. So this is Tom Izzo. Apparently, he is not a big fan of the portal,
I
transfer
got
portal.
15, 16 guys.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what's going on. I don't want to wait for it, but Tom Izzo said something. He's very critical of the transfer portal. You go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, well, first of all, I'm glad we're getting an opportunity to address this because I know how sacred this time of year is for Phil, and I know,
It's the holiest
I'll
time of the
give him
year. I
credit.
said
He
that.
has bit his tongue probably for about the last 3 shows, knowing we wanted to talk about NCAA basketball. So I'm glad we finally getting a chance to do this for him, that he has an opportunity to purge his soul and talk about something that is deeply religious to him. So I'm glad.
Let me just say it. Let me just say
Yeah,
that's
I'm
big of
glad
you.
you're doing this. So if you remember the last conversation, what I didn't really disagree with what the spirit that you were saying, because I kind of came up, anybody that's my age or older, around your age, Phil Methuselah, remembers the good old days of college basketball, where guys would come and they would stay, 4 years.
Well, that's only about
Yeah,
3 years ago.
yeah.
It's not good
Well,
old. It's
I mean,
about
it
3
has
years
changed. I think the
ago.
one and done era, like going back to
It's not like when they had a peach
well,
basket,
I think
Kevin. I mean,
we're
we're
I think
talking
we're
3
talking
years ago.
about changes in college basketball. I think the first change was in the one and dones. It started out when you had guys who
Yeah.
were leaving high school and then
Yeah.
going straight to the NBA, and to try to address that, college basketball came up with the one and done rule. They tried that, and then the next evolution of the one and done rule is
Actually, that was an NBA thing, which forced guys to go to
absolutely.
college for a year. But
Then the next
continue. Not that I would
then the
correct
next
you.
evolution of that is now we've got NIL and the transfer portal. And so while it sucks for people, fans of college basketball, I think it's absolutely good for the college basketball athlete. And the reason why I say that is because coaches like Sean Miller and Tom Izzo and others have been able to move freely in impunity in college basketball and football, to leave programs and go take better opportunities that improve things for them and their families. And all that while, you had these starving college athletes who couldn't even buy
It's
who
starving.
couldn't even
Oh, really? They don't have training tables?
buy a
Starving?
pizza. And if they did wind up taking money from a booster or something like that, and they were caught by the NCAA, they would have everything
Starving.
stripped.
They were starving,
Hey,
you're saying.
Look, aren't most college students starving? I mean, I
Yeah,
starved
but
when
the
I
other
was
ones have to borrow.
in
The
college,
other
and
ones, the
my
non-jocks, have
parents
to
had a
borrow
little
money or
something.
take a job on campus cleaning tables. Those athletes, as I said the last time we talked about this, they're getting the equivalent of a $50,000 or $75,000
Yeah, but
education.
let's be real.
Not to mention
Phil.
probably
Let's
having.
be real, Phil. The majority of those kids who are going to college, Division I level especially, their major is whatever sport they're in. Like, they're majoring in going pro. They're not
Yeah, but they're given
majoring
the
in.
opportunity. They're given the opportunity to get.
They're
an
not
education.
majoring in philosophy. Hell, most of these kids aren't even going to class half the time, Phil. Let's stop that right now. Let's stop this. Let's stop this student athlete myth. And I'm not saying this is true of every college, but hey, I was an athlete and I went to school too. And I know a lot of my teammates didn't go to class. They didn't go to class every day, Phil. You know why? Because they were there to play basketball. They were there to play football, and they found a way to make it through. That's not every student. There, you actually have some very great academic students, but there are also some who their only reason why they're at a college or a university is they're majoring in going pro, right? Can we stop pretending that that's not true of some college athletes who go, that the only reason why they're in college is that's a stopover that they have to make before they go pro. And maybe if after a while they want to go back to school, I don't know why they would, because they probably would be millionaires after that. They get a broadcasting contract after that. They're not going to need any kind of degree. Most guys who go back after that only do it because they want to, not because they have to. So let's kill the noise about the student athlete thing, right? Like, that's a quaint excuse for people who don't like NIL and that sort of thing to always bring it up. Well, they're getting a $50,000 education. Hey, come on, man. Come on, man. What is the school getting? You might be giving me $50,000, but you're making $50 million, off of my name, image, and likeness at your university. That doesn't sound like exactly a fair trade-off there, Phil. So my argument is, I feel for you. I'm a basketball purist myself, and I remember those days. But it was never fair to the college athlete in the amount that they were bringing into, particularly to some of these big universities, the Ohio States, the Kentuckys, the Notre Dames of the world. They're making money hand over fist off of these kids. What NIL is doing is leveling the playing field now, and is giving the players an opportunity to, like what the coaches are doing. Hey, Sean Miller, I heard people say that Sean Miller, they were mad that he left, but hey, he's got a right to do what's best for his family. So a college kid doesn't. So a college coach can make a decision that's what's best for his family, but a college kid can't. You're expected to stay in one spot because some fan wants you to? Yeah. Come on, man. Get out of here, Phil.
I would even argue, Kevin, that you have more of an argument against the coaches moving, because you're affecting the whole team. Like, you got players that might have went to a particular college based off the promises of that particular coach, and now the coach just leaves you. I mean, how is that right? I mean, this is a no-brainer. People should get paid for what they bring to the table. These college athletes bring a lot of money. They should have been paid a long time ago. I'm sick and tired of hearing people like Tom Izzo belly aching because, things ain't like the way they used to be. You lost a little bit of control. You can't crack the whip the way you used to. That's what it comes down to. You don't have the same leverage on these ball players the way you used to. You don't have control over them the way you used to. You can't dominate every little part of their life and have them worship the ground that you walk on, because now they can go somewhere else and make money. That's what it's all about. College coaches complaining because they're losing control. But the game is just like it's always been, Phil.
No, it's not like it's always been. It's not like it's always been because of the fact that in the old days, which is only a couple of years ago, you developed a attachment and kind of a pride in your players, because once they that were there, they pretty much stayed there, unless they were one and done and they had the right to go to pros after a year, and some had the right to go if they were 19, I think, without even going to college. But other than that, you got to know these players and admire these players, and you got to see them, play in front of you for whatever 4 years. I mean, now it's not the same. Now it's like
you can't watch them for 4 years.
Everybody gets. Let me just finish. Everybody gets a new. It's basically everybody's new every year. So when you say, I understand your point, and I'm not going to argue with it, but
I mean, when you got separation anxiety or something, they move on. Boo-hoo, you don't see them for 4 years. Big deal.
That's between me and my therapist.
Here's why college basketball will be able to get away with it. Is they'll get away with it with the same way that the NFL gets away with it, or any other Major League Baseball or the NBA. People are attached to their alma maters, right? Like that's largely what a lot of the fan base, the base fan base for a lot of schools is the graduates and people who went there. They're attached to these schools, or maybe you wanted to go there and you never got there. So people are attached. The brand is the school, not necessarily the players, because the players recycle through much faster than they used to, admittedly. But I think because people have a love and affinity for particular types of schools, they will stick with it, even though the faces may change year after year. It's the same thing that happens in professional sports. right? Like players come and go with free agency all the time. They move on to teams that play them. We don't quit liking the NFL team that we love because
I do.
I
do. I have no interest in the NFL. I've always liked
yeah,
college. I don't like the NFL.
probably for that,
What about the
probably for that
NBA?
reason, right?
You like the
But
NBA,
but
Phil?
old school NFL fans remember
No,
old school
absolutely not.
NFL fans remember the days before free agency where a guy played his entire career with a team. Those
Right.
days are gone. If you're a guy from that era and you're that pure, you hate free agency. Like,
There you go with the age discrimination.
I'm just saying,
again.
like, if that's what you grew up in, hey, like you subscribe to that loyalty premise, like that means something.
The Green Bay Packers, Vince Lombardi, you play with small hurts.
So I feel what you're saying, Phil. I understand where you're coming from, but
you're empathizing. That's more than I.
But
I think
we've always pretended or conveniently turned a blind eye to the fact that college basketball or college sports in general, as much as they tried to pretend they were amateur, it was an amateur sport. It never was. It always was a business. The only difference was everybody else in that business got paid except the main employees. Right. And that's what the biggest difference is now is that the employees can get paid and they have options now. And that's the biggest difference. Now, here's what I will say why I think this is ultimately good. If you're a fan of the NCAA tournament, you're going to love it because you just said the smaller schools can't really compete in this environment with the bigger schools.
Yeah, you don't have the upsets, which I
think you're the only one. Still, I think the upsets are nice.
You don't think think people
because
love
here's
those
the
upsets?
Thing: gambling is a major part of sports. And what does everybody do with their NCAA college? Everybody pretty much fills out an NCAA college bracket, and nothing busts your bracket quicker than some 16 seed upsetting a number 2 seed or a 10 seed or somebody that you had going to
You tell me that
no,
isn't
it's not
exciting
exciting when
happens?
you're losing your money. It's not. Everybody want to win. Everybody want to win their NCAA bracket.
But Kevin, you're right about that. But it is exciting when you chose that Cinderella team on your bracket, and it comes.
But nobody does.
I don't even do brackets, but I just love rooting for those teams.
I hear you, Phil. I hear what you're saying because I think about I went to University of Cincinnati, and so my all-time college favorite UC player is Kenyon Martin. And I got a chance to see him come in as a freshman and become the #1 pick. And that was fun. Like looking back, having him there for 4 years, he didn't break his leg. We would have won the championship, no doubt, in my opinion. So I get what you're saying. Like, sure, I hear what you're saying, but I think there's a greater good. And the greater good is if you like these players, if you really support them, let them get paid and move on to the next level and live their lives and do whatever it is they're trying to do. But I hear what you're saying, though. From a pure sports college athlete perspective, I get what you're saying. I just don't think it's more important than people getting paid for what they bring to the table.
And I think that's the argument there. Like as a fan who is watching the sport or you love a particular team, it can be nerve-wracking, right? Because you don't get to know these guys over. I watch less college basketball now because of that. I used to watch a lot of college basketball. Admittedly, I don't watch much college basketball now because it's harder to keep up with the players now these days and what teams they're on. So what I wind up focusing on is the schools that I know, right? Like the bigger schools. I kind of pay attention to what Duke is doing, Kentucky is doing, obviously the local teams. But North Carolina's, the bigger school names, like that's who I pay attention to. The smaller schools and stuff like that. I think Phil's absolutely right. They're going to be the biggest losers in this process because they don't have the money to compete. But I think from a competitive standpoint, when you get to the tournament, what I think this is going to wind up doing is more of your traditional blue bloods. And your bigger schools are going to be the ones that you're going to see in the Sweet 16. I mean, like if you look at the Sweet 16 this year, with the exception of Arkansas, it was mostly chalk. I mean, the teams that you expected to be there are there. And I think that that's a direct product of NIL and
Right.
sort of what you're
Yeah,
seeing now.
that's
And
what
won't that
I'm
make
saying.
for
Exactly.
better games later in the rounds?
It does. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I think in the long run, it will be better for college basketball. Because let's face it, that's what people really want to see. The Cinderella is a charming story up until they run up against the team that they can't really beat, and then they get smoked by 30. And then you're sitting there thinking, like, man, I would have much rather have seen Duke North, not
No,
necessarily this season.
those Cinderellas often are very competitive. I can tell you about George Mason got to the Final Four. If you remember one year, what was the school that no, that's not really true. There's schools that have gotten to the round of 8, and
Sure.
mid majors have gotten to the Final
Well,
Four.
let's face it.
So it's not necessarily that they get blown out.
What was
the
the
next
team
game.
several years ago? Was it Bradley? Was that the team that they made it to, like? What was
No.
there was a small school. They made it to I think the championship game.
Well, there was Loyola of Chicago. Okay, that they got to the Final Four and played a very tough competitive game against Michigan in the Final Four and lost. But that was a great story. Now, to me, rooting for them was, much more exciting than watching Duke play Kentucky. That's just where I'm at. You guys,
Yeah, I
may
think
feel
people want
differently.
to see the best. I think people want to see the best teams play each other. I'm not saying that the Cinderella story isn't charming. Butler, that was the name.
Well,
of the
they
team.
do play each other, but they just have to make it through the Cinderellas first, which I think they ought to be required to do. I mean, well, again, we can look at it differently. I love college basketball. I didn't watch the Sweet 16 last night because I had
Yeah.
nobody to root
I
for.
just think
That's how I am.
I could be
Others are
wrong,
different.
but I just think by and large, people like the name brands, right? Nobody
you
wants to
something.
see.
Whenever they play
I think we had
highlights-
this a couple years ago. I think it was something like Florida Atlantic, or there was a weird like Final Four
Yeah.
like a couple years
Florida
ago
Atlantic got to the
that
Final
had a
Four.
whole bunch of teams
Yeah.
that maybe there was like one blue blood that was a part of that final. Maybe it was Connecticut and a bunch of the other 3 teams were like a bunch of small school teams that somehow made it to the Final Four. And it was probably the least interested that I had been in a Final Four in a long time.
Well, I mean,
namely because I think
what?
people want to see.
Why?
I think people want to see the big schools. I think they want to see the Duke Kentucky matchups.
Well,
I think they want to
maybe
see
you do.
the Michigan.
Maybe you do.
The more I hear you guys talk, I want to see both. I think Kevin, you are right. I think the majority of it, people want to see the big teams. But yeah, the Cinderella team, that's what it's all about, right? That's how they sell it. So
Yeah, you're not going to see. The problem is we're not going
I
to
think we
probably
will
see that
see it
anymore.
again.
By the way,
Don't sell
you ever-
those players short. I
I
think we
hope
will.
so. I hope so. If you when you look at clips, when they show clips of great games, they usually show Princeton, which a game I attended in person in Indianapolis. Princeton beating UCLA, that was the defending national champion in the first round. Pete Carell's last game, and what else? Lehigh beating Duke in the first round, 15 seed. And what was the other one that beat Duke? And this was, I mean, I could go on and on. And to me, this is what's exciting. Not just watching the Duke play Kentucky. That's just where I'm at. That's where I get my excitement. I think a lot of people do get their excitement from the tournament because of those upsets, which are, I think, going to be few and far
Again,
between
don't sell
now.
the players short. There's only so many spots at the powerhouse schools, and I think that you've got a whole lot of good ball players coming out of high school. And the more I listen to you guys talk, I probably watch more of the women's college game. Not probably, I certainly do. I watch more of the women's college game than the men's game. And then the more you guys were talking, I thought, what do I watch? I watch more high school. I watch more high school than I do college.
I like high
man,
school
look,
basketball.
OTE,
I
you
do.
got some great high school circuits out there with some really good talent. So there's a lot of college players that I kind of know of because I started watching them in high school. So it's kind of like a bottom up kind of thing rather than top down for me. The more I think about it, as you guys are talking.
Well, I'm just going to have to deal with this with my therapist. Well, no, I mean, I'll work
This
through
therapist
this.
is
But,
getting big money, huh?
but I'm telling you, I'm just bummed out. I'm just being honest with you. I'm bummed
Don't be.
out about this
It'll
tournament.
bounce back. It'll bounce back. You will see upsets.
See, this is what true friendship is. You guys are encouraging me affirming me. I needed this.
I'm
Thank
glad to hear
so
you
much.
say that,
Thank
Phil.
you.
So now you can give me and Nathan that 200 an hour that you're giving to your counselor right now. That's how you know Phil's. That's how you know Phil's pockets are fat and deep. This dude is spending 200 an hour to go
I'm
to some
kidding. I'm making a
psychologist to
joke.
talk him
Come
off the
on, I'm
ledge
kidding.
about
I
college
don't have a
basketball.
therapist. That's a
Must
joke.
be nice.
That's
Must
a
be
joke.
nice. Hey, listen, guys.
That's a joke. I'm making a
It's
joke.
been a lot of
Come
fun.
on.
I really appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy individuals. Thank you for being here with me. We'll be back next week, Tuesdays and Fridays. We go live, Hot Mic Podcast. To the audience, thank you for being here. Thanks for listening us up and sharing your comments and your time, because you don't have to be here. So I really appreciate it. And tell somebody about the podcast. And we're looking for more crew members. If you got any ideas, send them my way or send them to Kevin. And we'll put our heads together and make it happen. And I really appreciate you. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.